And hello.
Hey y'all. Y'all can hear me? I'm good?
You're good.
Okay.
You're
Okay.
good. Thank you so much for joining us, Charles.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. If you hear any loud banging, like don't be alarmed. They're like gentrifying my community, but got construction across the street, so
Copy that. Copy that.
yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing, yo. All right. So I want to share a little bit of your bio before we get into today's conversation. For folks who may be unfamiliar, well, the wonderful Charles Preston
The
was
wonderful.
born in California, but raised in Chicago since the age of 4 years old. He has a Bachelor's of Arts in African American Studies from Chicago State University. And also here at Chicago State University, Charles actually led a Save the CSU campaign, um, really rescuing that university from the Illinois 2015 Illinois budget crisis. Thank you so much for that labor.
Wow.
Charles also hosts Church on the Nine, a street-based open mic for the Chatham community, and they are a former communications chair for BYP 100, Chicago's chapter, specifically during the Laquan McDonald demonstrations, the Say Her Name campaign, as well as the termination of Officer Dante Servin. So, wow, wonderful, wonderful resume. Thank you so much for all of your labor.
Oh man, thank you. That took me back. But
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk with y'all and break some bread with some black folks. So
yes, yes, yes.
So, about to do it. Darren, do you want to kick things off? Or sorry, first I'll do it, then we can kick things. So yeah, basically wanted to talk tonight about the myth of black on black crime, um, the narrative that it's been creating for a long time in Black America. Um, and we know that this isn't true. We know that abolition is the way, and that's the way to help us dispel lies, change our current conditions. So that's what we get into.
Word, word. Thank you for breaking that down. All right, so let's just get right into it.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
Charles, from your expertise, can you share with the folks why the idea of or concept of black on black crime is actually a myth? And if you could speak to a little bit where this myth kind of comes from, where it stems from.
Oh, most definitely. So, we all know that black people don't kill black people or like don't commit harm against black people because they're black. That's like that's a common, um, explanation of why this is a myth. Also, um, yeah, it disregards and it doesn't really hold the fact that violence in our communities comes from a concentration of poverty and also a history of residential segregation, meaning that. Uh, when you when you segregate places, especially in the black community, like I'll take for instance Chicago, um, our communities where our homes are poverty ridden, poverty stricken, whereas you go into like the white neighborhoods, it's all affluent and everything. It's like when you get racial segregation, you often get economic segregation, cultural segregation, all types of segregation. It's like a separation of life. And so where does this come from? Well, specifically in Chicago, during the 1970s, there was conversations around black on black crime. If I'm not mistaken, the Chicago Defender, it was a black publication, who I wrote for, right? Uh,
Wow.
I think they actually used the term first, but this was like in conversation amongst our people. This is a black conversation with black people, black readership, right? And so what you started to see was this is like post civil rights and also post the 1968 riots. You have to have all this in context. And so like there was like a lot of harm in our communities, a lot of like devastation in our communities. And so while this is post civil rights, you do have like a black burgeoning middle class who is like assimilating into white mainstream America. And one of their issues is like I'm still in the hood and crime is still going on. How do I quote unquote protect this capital? They're not
Mm,
making it like that, but like that is the issue. And so even fast forward, you even get like Jesse Jackson, who talks about how if a black person kills a black person, they are charged less than when a black person kills a white person
Mm.
mm,
during the 70s. And so like this is he was actually like congratulating the Chicago Defender for like talking about this issue of violence within our communities, right? But all at the same time, you know, you have the rise of Reagan, right? You have the rise
Mhm.
of these white elites who are often looking at black communities and looking for narratives they can use to often like to criminalize and justify their policies and agendas. And so I want people to Google this. If you're at home, Google it. Even in 1980, the NAACP wrote a resolution talking about like black on black crime, saying that folks who are committing, like regardless of race, they need to be like held accountable, or like there needs to be some type of like carceral answer to the black on black. So this was a narrative like you first started in our communities, and then once mainstream America hears it, as with anything else, as if the word woke, as if whatever like we come up with, it will be used against us and to our detriment, right? And
Mhm.
so it is a myth because one, as I said again, it's a matter of proximity. Violence happens against proximity. Black people ain't killing each other at like astronomical rates. White people kill each other. Like it depends on where you're situated in the community. And then yeah. And so like fast forward today, now you see this, you still see it today. It's used as a deflating point to in regards to protests. I remember when I was out there protesting for like Laquan McDonald, you get shouted out, what about the black on black crime in your neighborhoods? What is happening into your neighborhoods? It's just to shut you up. That's it.
Yes. Yeah.
Because whenever we come for the state what the state likes to do is to criminalize our people and take our eyes off the ball in terms of like any revolutionary goal, in terms of like abolition. They will always constantly throw up these narratives that are constantly like criminalizing us and basically misdirecting movements.
Copy that. Wow. Thank you so much for breaking all that down. It's a wealth of history that you just shared with us. Our
Yeah.
wonderful researchers at Push Black actually kind of shared two historical facts that really kind of echo the sentiments that you just shared around like the long lineage of this concept of black on black crime.
Right.
So specifically, our researchers found that the notion of black on black crime actually gained traction in a book published in 1896 titled
Woo!
The Race, Traits, and Tendencies of the American Negro. And this is according to a professor of history and race and policy at Harvard Kennedy School, specifically Khalil Gibran Muhammad. But to echo another publication that you mentioned, the Chicago Defender, bringing this up in the late 70s and 80s, our researchers actually found one of the earliest modern references to black on black crime actually came from Ebony magazine in
Yeah.
1979. So yes, the first commercially successful black-owned magazine focusing on the African American community actually featured and centered an article about black-on-black
Black on
crime.
black.
Yeah, so thank you for speaking to like the class dynamics that really pushes this narrative forward. But just to think about this from the flip side, I suppose, why don't we hear more about white-on-white crime?
It's white people's country. like that is the norm. Like that to me. That's my answer. It's their country that is the norm. And black, and you have to other people, right? You have to like make people. You have to put them in margins, put them in boxes, and other it. And because black people have been criminalized bodies since we landed into this country, since we like were taken from from the motherland and put in this country, we have been othered. And so yeah, in my opinion, that's why we don't really elevate white on white crime. And also, yeah, that we also like to highlight the criminalization of black bodies and also black violence in general. um Going back to like lynchings, like people must see like the harm against the black body, in my opinion, to for like the white supremacist state to even like legitimize it itself. Um, these people have to be seen as worthy of death. These people have to be seen also as like worthy of yeah, criminalization. So that's my opinion.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, you got a little bit earlier when you like poverty, but we want to also make sure we're dispelling the myth that Black people are just naturally more violent, right? That's not
Yeah.
true. So, what specifics can you talk to us about maybe about Chicago? what like conditions and social problems are really at the root of the myth of Black on Black crime?
Oh man. Where do you begin? So, gentrification is really a big thing right now. Poverty, number one. Uh, and people not having access to mental health care, people not having access, the schools, being like Chicago had closed over 50 something schools back when Rahm was in office. But we all have always seen a boosting in police budgets and whatnot. But we have seen mental health clinics torn down. We have seen people fight for uh, even lead in the water. Like there's so many different things that can contribute to how we treat each other in our day-to-day practices, how we think about each other in our day-to-day practices. And so like these problems are not often highlighted. What is often highlighted is the carjackings, the murders, the body counts. And I work in news media. One thing, you hear, and has always been said, is like, if it bleeds, it leads. And that has always been the case when it comes to Black people. And I don't think it's in a lot of people's interest, for us to be flourishing in our communities, for us to actually be thinking about the overarching problems, the systemic neglect of our neighborhoods. Because if we do, then we have to like really, really, really confront and challenge the people who orchestrated and architected, like, and the architecture who orchestrated these dynamics. And that's going against politicians, developers, even the belief systems of our own, because like we pointed to Ebony Magazine, Jesse Jackson, the Chicago Defender, we have been indoctrinated with carceral logics, and also we've been indoctrinated with a way that we think about our people that has come from, white supremacy. So,
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, basically we about this conversation preparing for it. We were speaking with just ideating around that we're talking tonight of dispelling this myth. And honestly, the only way, and the way that we believe at Push Black, it allows us to frame the conversation about these myths and the myth of Black on Black crime, and really that you were speaking about. We can't reform our way out of it. And so we wanted to also ask you about 9. Can you just tell us a little bit about what it is and what you do?
So Church on the 9 no longer exists, but for 3 years I held an open mic on the corner of 79th and Cottage Grove in Chicago. One day I went on Facebook and I asked just a general question. I'm like, what intersection gets like the most foot traffic in the Black community? And a lot of folks commented on 79th and Cottage Grove, so I decided to like host an open mic there, and it went on for 3 years, like 3 consecutive summers. And yeah, at that open mic, it was like we were actually like deterring violence, and it showed people that Black people can be outside kicking it with each other, and it could be an intergenerational thing. It could be a all-inclusive thing as well. Like we had poets, we had rappers, drill rappers, we had gospel singers up there, we had frats stepping and whatnot. It was just beautiful to see. It was like, and I called it church because it was like a convening, and it was also like healing for like people to like witness and be in community with people just coming together to express. And yeah, my goal when I started it was like, I hope people can like replicate those type of spaces, right? Because we need spaces in which we can just express. And I believe a lot of our frustrations in our community, a lot of harm that happens in our community, is out of an inability to creatively express and also be affirmed in that expression as well.
Yes. Wow.
100%. Well, thank you for telling us about that. That was dope. Darren.
I'm curious just to follow up on that. For folks who would want to replicate that, or maybe if they want to think about other avenues for addressing just intracommunal violence, I'm curious for Black community members concerned about gun violence or domestic violence specifically, what advice would you share for them to get involved?
Do it. Do not think twice. If you have all you need is 3 people, 2 or 3 people. Get your friends, y'all think of something public to do that
Mm,
is like that makes you feel good, and do it on a consistent level. I'm not an expert in like, developing any type of program, but there are so many people in our communities that we tend to overlook. They just get out and do it. Like
mhm.
we need all hands on deck. That's the state of Black America. Always. As long as white supremacy exists, and the conditions of our neighborhoods exist, and we can name these systemic problems, and we know that abolition is the answer, we're gonna have to constantly have an all hands on deck moments. Not everyone can be on the front lines. If you can be on the front lines, cool. But if you have an idea, a public idea, and this ain't for you to capitalize off of and make a whole bunch of money. No, Church on the Nine was free, never got paid a dime.
Right.
Go
Yes.
outside and create something with your people. That's it. And do
Well,
it consistently and show up. That's it.
copy that. Just a quick follow-up. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with any local orgs in Chicago or initiatives or any national initiatives, but are there any orgs or initiatives you would like to lift up that are kind of working on these particular issues?
Most definitely. I would like to lift up Good Kids Mad City in Chicago. They've been doing great and phenomenal work. I want to say the People's Programs out in Oakland. I like what they're doing. I'm wearing No Names Book Club. I like what she's doing.
Yes.
Push Black, y'all are doing an awesome job. A lot of these revolutionary organizations as well. Black Alliance for Peace. Yeah, it's all hands on deck moment. Shameless plug. If you want to keep me employed, look into Injustice Watch. Um, that's the nonprofit I work for. Basically, we just look at institutional failures within Illinois, and just expose them. Right now, we're really concentrated on judges. We put out a judicial guide every time judges are up for elections in Cook County in Chicago. And so,
Oh,
like, when you see, like, the Kyle Rittenhouse trial and whatnot, people don't know about judges until they get on TV and act a fool. And so,
Mhm.
like, people need that information about judges coming out of, like, wherever they live. And so, that's the work that we do. We get all the info on judges before you get your ballot. So,
wow. Thank you so much for that labor.
yeah.
Let's see. All right. Bree, did you want to get in and ask this next one?
Yeah. So, I was still thinking about what you said about the judges thing because I
Yeah.
think that's powerful. I know it'd be really powerful if a lot more of us all over had access to that information. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think you said the organization is called Injustice Watch.
Injustice Watch, yeah.
Justice Watch, cool. So, we wanted to talk about like the crime, and how it's a poor response to matter. Um, so I don't know. I guess the question is, how do you respond to those who use sensationalized as a rebuttal for calls for police abolition and accountability when it comes to like Black Lives Matter?
It depends on where it comes from. And it depends on like who is offering that criticism, um
Mm.
or that like critique, because I don't answer to everybody. That's number one. And especially like if they ain't Black, and if they ain't like striving for like or what we have to do. Now if it's like some people within the community, um I give it to them real. I give them my perspective. But also it's showing better than telling. I can convince a lot of people out here, like whenever you're organizing, it ain't all about like, rebuttaling people at the moment. Because abolition sounds crazy to a lot of people at the moment. But I guarantee you, if you show up for them on a constant basis and gain some trust, they'll change their mind. They'll go with whatever you go to, because what you're doing is you're automatically diametrically opposing yourself to the state.
Wow.
What they automatically cling to is the state and the state narratives, the carceral, the reform, and that's what they're used to. And like we see what has that gotten us in this pandemic, and then what has that gotten us for the past centuries, right? But
Yeah.
once they start seeing someone and organizations who are acting diametrically opposed and are in the interest of them and are showing up for them on a doorsteps like the Jehovah Witness, so they'll get it together. You know, they'll come around because they'll be like, well, I may not know about this ideology, I may not have the words, I may not have the information, but these are my people.
Mm. Wow. Thank you so much for searching that need for solidarity. I'm sorry, Bree, were you about to jump in?
No, I was just basically going to see it's kind of say that it's like anything in our lives, like we got to see other people and specifically other people like us, like already doing
Yeah.
it. And that
Yeah.
is easy to jump in and find how you can play your part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Let's see. I'm curious how you would respond, just thinking along those lines, just people within our community kind of concerned about the violence that happens within our community. How would you respond to those who use like the sensationalized framing of Chicago as a rebuttal to calls for police accountability or abolition? And here I'm really thinking about the ways in which Rahm Emanuel's tenure that you've already spoke to has really affected Chicago's Black communities. And I'm curious how that narrative how it kind of harms or what that has to do with the goal of abolition, and then also like certain calls to reform police.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of advocates and activists, they get hit with that something needs to happen, something needs to be done about these carjackings, something needs to be done about, you know, violence on the streets. Like we know, like violence is consistent as wherever poverty is. Like everyone should know that, but it's really hard for people to accept it when they're like have it on their doorstep or like, you know, they see it. Um, so they cling on to like I already said, like state answers such as like the police. So what activists and organizations, especially like an organization like Good Kids, like Mad City, what they do is like they try to do it twofold. It's like, okay, we're going to serve our community and try to open up safe spaces for our community while also advocating for the defunding of the police, so like they can use those resources to put in our community, so like we will have like answers to these problems, so we can develop our own systemic response to poverty, to the mentalities, right? And so yeah, that's one way that advocates and activists have been going about it, is like you know, defunding the police. And yeah, I think it's hard for any one person, you know, to answer it without having an organized front and also being in solidarity to like people who have been dealing with intercommunal violence, right? And so like you see an organization like Good Kids Mad City, one good thing that they do is they show, you know, solidarity to some organizations who have been like servicing a Black population in terms of like when violence does hit their doorstep, because you can't ignore those groups. Those groups are needed. Like people need places to mourn, people need places to like they need resources in terms of like funerals. There's so much need. And yeah, the more we can show solidarity to groups and actually meet on the common ground, on the common basis of like, yo, we need to stop the criminalization of our people while also tending to our people, I think we'll see more progress.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's all the questions I got, Aaron.
That's pretty much all the questions I have. I'm just wondering, Charles, if you have like any last kind of comments or last thoughts around abolition or anything you want folks to kind of take away from this discussion today.
Well, yeah, like number one is do something. If you have if you have issue, if you feel a urge or like very passionate about this issue, you gotta put your hands in it. You gotta get dirty. And there's no way we are going to like cleanly solve these problems and issues. And so like part of theorizing is practicing. And when you practice, you gain theory. And then you can talk and be an authoritative on the subject and whatnot. So that's one takeaway I want people to have. And then yeah, we really have to continue to demand for the abolition of systems, especially like if these systems do not serve us. If we can agree that they don't, then we have to think about abolition, and we have to like really concentrate on the state and how much the state has violently perpetuated these myths about us. You know, we can look at the black on black crime narrative and point to mass incarceration. You can see that, and people have been in jail for like decades
Mm.
over this, and it has like stunted rehabilitation. It has stunted restoration, and has put more families in harm's way in terms of like economic depravity. So like we have to really look at the state, charge the state, and then put some boots on the ground and wherever that may be, wherever your skill set is, organize with it, and good things will happen.
Wow. Thank you.
We appreciate you joining us. We for tapping in with us. Thank you so much for your support, and you'll be seeing more conversations like this from us in the new year. So thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so
y'all.
much. Thank you.
Bye.